I'm Kara, this is my channel, Darling Vulgarity, and in today's episode of Rebel Fashion, we're going to talk about androgyny. I wanted to pose the question, does or can androgynous style make you look more attractive? The simple answer is attractiveness is subjective, so yes, to one audience, it could make you more attractive, and maybe to another audience, it could make you less. But then I dug a little bit deeper. I came across this article by Bricky of transvitae.com. I've linked it below. And it's about how when she was first transitioning, ultra feminine clothes made her feel like she was playing the role of a woman, but not really embodying her own feminine identity. I beat myself up every time a dress didn't fit right, or when something that should have made me feel beautiful just didn't. Eventually, I realized I was chasing someone else's idea of womanhood, not my own. About androgynous fashion, Bricky wrote, "It's about taking bits of what you like and building something that reflects who you are, not what anyone else thinks you should be. I was born a woman and I identify as a woman, and I feel this. There are plenty of times when I see a cute dress that is full of ruffles and bows, and I love it and I get it, and then I never wear it. Why? Because I feel like a cupcake. I feel infantilized and self-conscious, and nobody wants to feel like that, especially in a statement outfit where you're drawing some attention to yourself." Now, there are plenty of people who feel more confident in ultra-feminine clothes. I'm just not one of them. I am a woman with a lot of masculine energy, and when I wear an outfit that has a more balanced mix of masculine and feminine elements, I just walk a little taller. Confidence is attractive, and the more confident you feel in an outfit, the better you're gonna look. Okay, spoiler alert. In Pride and Prejudice, the central male character, Mr. Darcy, comes off at first to be a handsome, rich, arrogant a-hole. But by the end of the book, he reveals that he is totally smitten for our lead girl, Elizabeth Bennet, and he opens his heart and shares this with her. And that is why he is held up as the romantic ideal for so many people. He is strong, but he is willing to soften for the woman he loves. And there is something about an androgynous look that hits that perfect balance of strength and softness. Because we want the authority, the rock, the boss energy, but we don't want it combined with an emotional brick wall. It is much more appealing with a little bit of tenderness. A 2024 study in the European Journal of Social Psychology showed most people across cultures have a positive bias towards more androgynous faces. Participants were specifically asked to rate faces based on perceived creepiness, and androgynous faces were rated less creepy and more trustworthy than their masculine-faced counterparts. Now, wearing an androgynous outfit will not change the curve of your jawline, but presenting a mix of masculine and feminine in your clothing can change the way you're perceived. Here's an example. I have very broad shoulders, which is usually seen as a masculine trait. Clothes are not going to change the shape of my shoulders, but I can dress in a more feminine way to either soften or offset that broadness, or I can put on a structured blazer and ham it up to look more masculine. Each choice will alter how masculine or feminine I look, even though physically nothing has changed. Gender is a social construct, and for much of fashion history, clothing has been gendered. A skirt doesn't just leap out and grab somebody with boobs. It's just a piece of fabric. But we, as a society, decide that one group gets to wear it, and for the other group, it's taboo. And when you look at it that way, the whole thing seems really silly. But these are powerful status quos that have had a bearing on how we dress for hundreds of years. So let's look at some of the rebels throughout history who said, "I'm not buying it." The 17th century court of Versailles was a playground for the richest of the rich. And by the end of the 17th century, France was the epicenter of fashion for the entirety of Europe. Male aristocrats wore these curly, cascading wigs. They wore stockings, these baggy lace and ruffle petticoat breeches that resembled skirts. Red-heeled shoes were actually incredibly popular among the wealthiest men of Versailles because they symbolized a wearer who was far too wealthy for manual labor. So much so that he had on the most impractical shoes that they could come up with at the time. The Chevalier d'Eon was an interesting character who lived his life as a man for the first 49 years of his life. He was Charles. He was a French diplomat, a soldier in the 7 Years' War, and a spy for King Louis XV. But starting in 1777, d'Eon became a woman named Charlotte. He lived the rest of his life as a woman and was officially recognized as a woman by King Louis XVI. You can see in this painting by Abbé Alexandre Auguste Robineau, a man, Monsieur Saint George, was fencing with Mademoiselle la Chevalier d'Eon, and the Mademoiselle is obviously no slouch. Well-to-do young British men started adopting this French effeminate way of dressing, and it was called the macaroni style. And the men themselves were referred to as macaronis. Fun fact, the song Yankee Doodle, which originated during the American Revolutionary War, was actually written by a British man. And in the song it says, stuck a feather in his hat and called it macaroni. So that was actually the British poking fun at the unrefined Yankees for thinking that all it took to be a macaroni was to stick a feather in your hat. So this song that we adopted as part of our national character was actually a poke at how unsophisticated and unrefined we were. 19th century French novelist Amandine Lucille Aurore Dupin, more commonly known by her pen name George Sand, didn't just adopt a man's name to make selling her work easier. She also chose to wear male clothing in public. Sand's friends and peers obviously respected the ambiguity as they alternated between masculine and feminine adjectives when referring to the author. So these have all been examples of androgynous fashion for aesthetics' sake. But at this point in history, we're going to get into androgynous fashion as a point of practicality and then as a political statement. Around the Victorian era, women started adopting some styles that were a little more masculine than they had heretofore donned. We would look at them and think no big deal, but they caused quite a ruckus at the time. The cycling suit, for example, was worn by plenty of women with no intention of getting on a bike, who just wanted to move around a little more freely. Elizabeth Smith Miller was one of the first designers to introduce the Turkish pants or bloomers around 1850. She showed this style to her cousin, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, whose name you might know. She is an incredibly famous American women's rights activist. And Cady Stanton had this to say, and I'm going to quote it exactly because this woman's mind was blown by, suddenly not having to put a skirt on or 10 skirts or whatever it was.
Like a captive, set free from his ball and chain, I was always ready for a brisk walk through sleet and snow and rain, to climb a mountain, jump over a fence, work in a garden, and was fit for any necessary locomotion. What a sense of liberty I felt, with no skirts to hold or brush ready at any moment, to climb a hilltop, to see the sun go down or the moon rise, with no ruffles or trails impede by the dew or soiled by the grass.
Amelia Jenks Bloomer is the person who really popularized these pantaloons. Amelia owned and operated a women's newspaper called The Lily at the time. Hundreds of women wrote into her to ask about them, to get the pattern from her. They just craved this freedom from skirts. Louisa Capetillo is another really interesting character in history that I encourage you to go look up. But quick and dirty, she was a Puerto Rican women's rights activist and a writer. In 1915, she became the first woman to wear men's trousers in public in Puerto Rico. She was thrown in jail for it. The charges were later dropped, but she repeated this act in Cuba, where the charges were not dropped, and she was deported from Cuba about a year later. In the 1920s, La Garçon became a popular women's fashion movement in France, and it translated in America to the flapper style, which we all know, which basically has grown women dressing kind of like adolescent boys. They cropped their hair off short, the waistlines all became very straight. This is when Coco Chanel became a really popular designer. And then in the 1960s, androgynous fashion went wild. Yves Saint Laurent released the smoking suit, Jimi Hendrix wore high heels and blouses on stage, and Mick Jagger took the stage in London in 1969 in a man's dress, designed by British fashion designer Michael Fish. Glam rock in the 1970s, think David Bowie, had men adopting very feminine styles. Power dressing in the 1980s, think Annie Lennox, had women adopting very masculine styles. And today, Gen Z is a huge force behind a new brand of androgynous fashion. Think Billie Eilish. Brands like Big Bud Press, Lucy and Yak are meeting this demand for comfortable, non-binary clothing. Lest we veer too far off course, this is a fashion video, and we are gonna put some androgynous outfits together. These outfits are my idea of androgyny based on my physicality and my personality. Yours may be different. Take a look in your closet and see what you can pull together that draws inspiration from all the androgynous pioneers we just talked about. The retro preppy look is really in right now, so the first outfit I have on kind of uses that as inspiration. I think preppy is also a really accessible place to start when you're looking at building an androgynous outfit. I have a whole video about preppy fashion here. There was no preppy for women at first. Women just walked in Brooks Brothers and shopped the smallest sizes that they had on the racks. Preppy is also so easy. It's such a classic, basic style that I'm sure you have the elements in your wardrobe to put something together. Right now, I am wearing a big white blouse. I got it at the thrift store in the men's section. I've got a vest over top. I added a little brooch because I thought it was cute. I've got some straight leg jeans on and a pair of Converse. I think ties are a really easy and fun way for women especially to get that preppy and or androgynous look. So I was gonna wear a tie with this outfit, but I saw the cutest idea on Free People, so I have to give their stylists credit. And what they did was take a bag and use ties like bag charms to accessorize it. So I've done it with this leather bag. And I think this is such a fun, different way to incorporate a men's tie into an outfit without just wearing the tie. My fashion history spiel was by no means comprehensive. There are plenty more examples of androgynous fashion throughout history, one of which I really am inspired by, and I didn't even mention, which is the women of World War II who went to work, whether it was on the family farm, taking over the duties that were typically reserved for the men, or literally putting on pants and going into a factory. So I'm very drawn to any piece of clothing that looks like a piece of menswear that was taken and modified for a woman. I saw this outfit and it gave me that feeling of these look like men's pinstripes that a woman took and redesigned it for her own purposes. This last outfit is my ode to glam rock and 60s counterculture androgyny by way of business casual. So I have this silk top. It's one of the tops that you tie into a pussy bow, but I've left it undone and layered another scarf over top. I don't know where I got this scarf. I've had it for longer than I can remember. I've paired it with some black and white striped Big Bud Press trousers, which feel very glam rock and Bowie to me. And while it's wearable, the whole thing gives me a vibe of more feminine blouse, more masculine pants, wear it with attitude. It's a really fun fit. So let's circle back to our initial question. Can androgynous fashion make you look more attractive? And the answer? Of course it can! Androgynous style can boost your confidence. It can add complexity and visual interest. According to science, it can make you look less creepy. And historically, it is a fashion statement that has stood the test of time. Thank you so much for joining me for this video today. If you liked this video, then please subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you can see more episodes of Rebel Fashion as soon as they come out. If you have any cool ideas about fashion rebels throughout history, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I have a lot of ideas and I'm really excited to keep making these videos. So I hope you enjoy them and I'll see you next time.